Section 10 of The Golden Heart and Other Fairy Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by John Hunter. The Golden Heart and Other Fairy Stories by Violet Jacob. Jack Frost. A Story for Very Little Children. There once was a little old man called Jack Frost, who lived up in the sky. He was very small and very wicked, and he had a long, long nose and the most dreadful crooked hands in the world. His beard was thin and pointed and stuck out in front of him, and, on his head, he wore a pointed cap made of ice, which glittered in the moonlight. When the moon was a crescent, he would sit astride of it, looking into the earth below, and thinking what horrible mischief he could do next. His favourite amusement was to come jumping down into some nice garden where the flowers were still blooming at the end of the autumn, and pinch all their beautiful heads until they died. Sometimes, too, he would pinch the birds' toes, and sometimes, in the winter, he was so cruel as to kill the poor little things outright. He had a heart as hard as a stone, and the more wickedness he could do, the better he was pleased. The birds hated him, and the squirrels hated him, and the gardeners hated him, and no wonder, too. One day he sat on the moon in a very terrible humour, thinking of all the bad things he meant to do. And he took a great jump and came down on a weathercock, which was fixed on the top of the larch tree near a big stone house standing in a garden. Inside the house, a little boy in his nightshirt stood at a window. The curtains were closed behind him in the warm room, but he had got out of bed to admire the stars which were bright overhead. He saw Jack Frost swinging about on the weathercock, and he did not know who he was. "Nurse," he cried, "come and look at the funny little man who is sitting all by himself on the weathercock." "Nonsense," said the nurse. "How can a man sit on a weathercock? Get back into bed this minute, or you will have a cold in the morning, and I shall be obliged to give you nasty medicine." "But come, come," he cried again. The nurse went to the window and looked out, and, just as she did so, Jack Frost jumped off the weathercock into a holly tree. "There! Did you see that?" shouted the little boy, clapping his hands. The nurse saw it very well, but she could not account for it, so she pretended it had not happened. "Stuff!" she said. "It was only a bird flying." "But a bird hasn't got a pointed cap, and a long beard, and a coat with long tails." "If I said it was a bird, you may depend I was right," said the nurse, pushing him back into bed rather roughly. But she tucked him in well and gave him a kiss, for she was a very kind person, really. As Jack Frost sat in the holly tree, a robin who happened to be awake came to get a few holly berries, for they were beginning to turn red. "What are you doing on the holly tree?" he asked as he saw him. "What's that to you?" said Jack Frost, who had no manners. "I am sure he is up to some harm," said the robin. "I will just wait about and see." Jack Frost sat mumbling and laughing to himself. What he really wanted to do was to go into the garden and spoil the flowers. Presently, a squirrel who was out of bed late ran up the trunk of the larch tree close by. He flourished his tail and stopped to look at Jack Frost. "Good evening," he said very civilly, for though he did not like Jack Frost, he knew how to behave. For answer, Jack Frost took out a fir cone he had in his pocket and threw it at the squirrel's head. "He has been badly brought up," said the squirrel, who had several children and was very particular about their behaviour. Then he went and sat at the foot of the tree to watch Jack Frost, for he knew he was wicked, and he thought it better to keep his eye on him. All this time the horrid little man was looking at the garden wall. He sat very still, till he heard "To-woo! To-woo!" close by, and saw a large, soft-winged owl flitting among the branches. "To-woo, Jack Frost!" he cried, as he sat down beside him. "How are you this evening?" For answer, Jack Frost kicked up his heels very rudely in the owl's face. The bird flew silently away, but he did not go far. He knew Jack Frost was up to no good, so he perched hard by and watched him with his round, burning eyes. When all was quiet again, Jack Frost went hopping from tree to tree till he got close to the garden wall, where he could see over into the flower beds. He did not know that the robin, the squirrel, and the owl were all looking at him from the places in which they had hidden themselves. Such a lovely garden as it was! There were green walks and hedges and borders of heliotrope and pansies, and, all round the hedges, rows of dahlias and hollyhocks stood like kings and queens, red, yellow, pink, white, and gorgeous orange. When they saw the little wicked man, they were terrified, poor things, and though they tried to look bold and stand up straight, they knew in their hearts that he had come to kill them. Close by stood a cottage in which the gardener was asleep in his bed, wearing a fine red nightcap with a handsome tassel on the end of it. He was very kind to the little boy who lived in the stone house, for he had no children of his own, and he liked to take him out and show him birds' nests and flowers, and teach him to dig and plant and water the garden. In the middle of his sleep, he was wakened by hearing a strange noise outside. He sat up in bed. Tap, tap, it went on. "Who's there?" cried the gardener, jumping out of bed and opening the window. The robin was on the window-sill, very much excited and dancing about. "Please, sir," said he, "Jack Frost is sitting up in a tree close to the garden." Thank you," said the gardener, beginning to put on his trousers. "I'll get up this moment." He had just got them on when a loud scraping sound began on the window-sill. "Who's there?" cried the gardener again. "Me," said the squirrel. "Quick, quick! Jack Frost is sitting on the garden wall." Thank you," said the gardener, beginning to put on his boots. In another moment there was a great cry outside, "To-woo! To-woo!" and a great flapping of wings. "Come out! Come out!" screamed the owl. "Jack Frost has jumped down into the garden." Thank you," cried the gardener, catching up a big stick and running out of the house. Jack Frost was in a flower bed, looking up into the face of a beautiful pink hollyhock and thinking which of its blossoms he would pinch first, when he heard a loud shout and saw the gardener with his red nightcap and his big stick coming in at the garden door. He was most dreadfully frightened and began to run with all his might. The gardener was after him at once, so he tried to reach the gooseberry bushes and hide himself among them, hoping it would be too dark for anyone to see him. But the owl, who could see everything at night, flew after him, calling out, "There goes Jack Frost among the gooseberry bushes! There he is! This way! This way!" So he found it impossible to hide himself. It was a good thing for him that he could run much faster than the gardener, because he was so thin and had such long legs. He ran, and the gardener puffed and blew and could not catch him. So at last he took up a flower-pot and threw it as hard as he could at Jack Frost. It hit him in the very middle of the back and knocked him flat on his face on the path. He tried to get up, but the gardener got hold of him by the collar and shook and beat him with his big stick till he prayed for mercy. Then he took him by the ear and dragged him out of the garden. At last Jack Frost wriggled out of his grasp and ran for his life. He dashed into the larch tree and climbed up the branches to the topmost bough where the weathercock was. There was no moon for him to get on to, for she had gone to bed, and the sky was so high that he could not jump up all the way at once, so he was obliged to sit hidden in the tree until the next night. The next night was misty, and the moon came only occasionally out of the cloud. The little boy who lived in the stone house got out of his bed again to see her. While he was looking, Jack Frost took a mighty leap and sprang up right through the clouds. "Look, look!" cried the little boy. "There is the funny man again." "It's you who are funny," said the nurse, and she hurried him back into bed and gave him one of his favourite toys to put under his pillow. She knew nothing about little men who jumped among the trees. Jack Frost landed safely on the moon and then flew high, high up, but he never came down into that garden again. End of section 10. End of The Golden Heart and Other Fairy Stories by Violet Jacob.